Welcome back, everybody. We've been having a conversation for the last 5 minutes about suggestibility and hypnosis and everything. And I was telling Ori the story about when I was a kid, and hopefully my dad doesn't watch this, but when I was a kid, we had horses, and northern Minnesota was where we were located. So you only have summer for 3 months if you're lucky. And that's the only time you can get hay to store for the rest of the winter. Most people who live in the southern states or somewhere where it's not as shitty in the wintertime as Minnesota is, you can just let your horses and livestock just go eat all the time. They just help themselves. It's like a buffet. The world is their buffet. They do whatever they want. But up there, you actually have to go get the food, the grain, the hay, and everything else. And when I was a teenager, like most teenagers, or at least for me, I was, lazy, and I didn't really want to have to work. I mean, it was hard work. It's work at home all day in the summer when there was no school. Then I had a job as well. And just like any other human being, I was just trying to make my day the most efficient and do the least amount possible, because there was other fun things to do at the time. And for the first couple summers, we had to go get there's square bales. For anybody who's not familiar, we've all seen them. Like they have on hay rides. They're stacked in the back or whatever of the thing. They're the big a brick of hay with twine around it. Well, the people who own the farms or the farmland that would get it, they have this machine to go out, it makes them into bales. So then we would have to go around behind them with our pickup truck and our big trailer, go out physically, pick them up, carry them back to the trailer, go up and down the field all day, just picking those things up, put them around. Well, I hated that so much that I started telling my parents that I was allergic, and I started acting like I was allergic. I would rub my eyes when they weren't looking to make my face look worse. I pretend I was nasally and whatever, and sneezing and everything else. And then sure enough, a year later, we went to go do it again. And I had a horrible allergic reaction to it. Not even trying. It just happened. And that continued into probably my mid 30s every year at the same time. And I wasn't even living in Minnesota then. Obviously I moved around a lot, but any other part of the country, I would have horrific allergies during allergy season. And I'm pretty convinced that I did that to myself, that I started it as a teenager, convinced myself that I was allergic to hay fever, hay season, whatever it's called, when it's bad, the pollen in the trees and all that crap. And then that continued until a few years ago. And I've got some symptoms now, but I haven't had any problems. But I was one of those people during hay or allergy season where I would have to go get really strong medication that usually would screw up my cognition, and it would just make me miserable. So yeah, and then recently I didn't think about it. It just literally forgot to remind myself that I was allergic to things a few years ago. And then allergy season would pass. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So anyway, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I'm pretty convinced I did it to myself.
I don't know if we've actually discussed this before, but for maybe about a year of my life, I became the allergy guy for a while, where I was working out of a doctor's office in Sedona, and my main thing was working with people with allergies. And hundreds of different people I worked with there and in other places. And literally everything that you say is the stuff that we managed to do just on the opposite side, where all that you need to do to get a person over an allergy, however crazy it is, obviously there's hypnosis involved, but if you can get a person to completely feel absolutely safe and comfortable around the thing that they're allergic to, and the brain can make that connection from a hypnotic point of view, the allergy is completely gone. And I think I told you a story about the kid with eggs, for example, that was just, what you call it, would go into anaphylactic shock, exactly, if he ever ate eggs. And then just doing this kind of little just imagination exercise with him, and all of a sudden he's eating eggs completely normally forevermore. And all it took was to get the brain to just break that connection. And all you're talking about is doing it from the other side. And you can very easily do that to people. As a matter of fact, one of the things that really gets to me very much is I'm not really against therapists. To some degree, people would call me one, but very often when a person goes to see a therapist and they talk about something that they're scared of, you know what? I'm just so afraid of snakes. And the doctor says, well, tell me what it's like to be around a snake. And the person goes and starts freaking out. They go, no, stop thinking about that. Think about puppies. Everything will be okay. And what they don't realize at that moment is that they're trying to break the connection between the person's fear and snakes. But very often what they can do is that they can then associate that fear with something else too, such as now I'm also afraid of puppies, and now I'm also afraid of butterflies, and whatever it is. And I've seen this happen very, very often, where what happens is a person has a fear, and what they think that they should be doing is focusing in on the fear and thinking about something that they're happy about. And all that they tend to do is they tend to generalize that fear away, or in the same way, if you've got a strong allergy to something and then you have that symptom, but you're not sure what you have it around, you can generalize your allergy into so many other things. So let's just say, for example, you're allergic to cat hair, and there's a cat in the house, but you say, I'm not allergic to cats. And all of a sudden you go and you have a sip of your hot chocolate and you don't know why, but all of a sudden you start developing a sensitivity to cacao. It's because your brain doesn't know what it is that's associated to. And if you make that association yourself, your body will just say, I just want to keep him safe. And it will actually take that one step further. And it blows me away to see how many different ways people's brains can either get rid of symptoms or create symptoms by just thinking about things in very unique and special ways. And I mean, there's more for me to say about this in terms of, I mean, the way the brain works. But I definitely want to chime in with that specifically about, I mean, makes perfect sense to me what you did to yourself as a kid.
Yeah, it reminded me with the cat thing too, because we were around some cats, just in general, traveling, staying with family, and I do the same thing with that. For some reason, I talk myself into being allergic to them. But if I'm in somebody's house and they have a cat, and I don't remember that they have a cat, because sometimes they hide. You know, cats are weird. Then I'm fine until I see it. I'm like, oh shit, there it is. Then I'm like, oh, you know. So it's
Oh God, darn it.
yeah, it's ridiculous. What's the process to come out of that? Does it actually a hypnosis session, or are things that people can do at home to kind of, because I know we're in our heads and our thoughts are just going crazy nonstop and all this other stuff. Is it something where I have to keep reminding myself? What would you do if somebody had severe allergies?
The basic logic is that, I mean, if you can get a person to, and I've said this to you before, that I see a person's way of thinking as two very distinct things. It's what you think about and what you feel. And they're two very different things, but most people assume that they're connected. And so if I can get you to think about the thing that you're allergic to while feeling completely safe and comfortable and calm, and actually really completely see yourself or experience yourself in that situation around the thing that you're allergic to, but your body stays completely safe and calm, what will happen is you will actually make that connection. And from that point forth, you're completely fine. But what tends to happen is a person will think about the thing that they're allergic to and then also think about something else and start kind of like mixing up their sensations. So all of a sudden now they're feeling unsafe and slightly allergic. And now they're thinking about the thing that they're allergic to and they're trying to feel better. And all that they do is they actually make it slightly worse at that point in time. And so what the NLP allergy technique is really about, and it comes from the field of NLP, it's basically putting a person into a very, very relaxed, dissociated state. So they're completely not associated with what they're thinking or feeling at that moment, and they just feel completely safe and comfortable. And then you have them imagine another them over there that feels completely safe and comfortable around the thing that they're allergic to. And completely dissociated, they can see that person over there being around whatever it is, cats or hay or whatever it is, completely safe and comfortable. And you make sure that they stay completely dissociated until they get to the place that they can completely see without a shadow of a doubt that that person has no issue with that allergic thing whatsoever. And then what you do is you have them slowly step into that other person and maintain that state of feeling calm and safe. If they can't, you pull them back and you create more dissociation until they can completely, fully associate with being that person that doesn't have that allergic reaction. And it's the most interesting thing when you do this to someone, you'll actually start noticing their body start twitching and their body actually reorienting as their neurological system, their nervous system completely rewires. And it completely changes the person, and you can see the moment that something changed. And then all of a sudden, it's the craziest thing that I've worked with so many people that will tell me I've got an allergy to cats. And I'll say, well, imagine that there's a cat in the room. And I would just tell them, just imagine that there's a cat in the room. And all of a sudden their nose starts running and their eyes start watering. And I'm like, there's no cat here. So obviously this has nothing to do with cats. It has to do with the fact that your brain is associating this with something. And if we just break that association, it's gone forever. So I will say it's something that I strongly recommend be done, especially if you've got a soft allergy and it's not a big deal, that's one thing. But if you have a strong allergy and an anaphylactic kind of reaction, this is probably something you want to do in a very safe and controlled environment to make sure that you're safe just in case something does go wrong and you want to be with someone that's done this kind of stuff before.
Yeah, I would imagine it would take probably multiple sessions, right? Or has anybody come in the door and been able to walk out of there and have no problems?
It's one of my favorite things. It's like, this is one of those things that sometimes you've done within 15 minutes. It is so quick. It's all it takes is to just break that association and create a new one. And it happens instantly. It's the same thing as like with a person over a phobia. It's one of my favorite things because you can literally get a person over it within 5 to 20 minutes. It's Richard Bandler, the co-creator of NLP. He had there's one story that he was taken to college where he was given 5 people with different phobias to work on. And they said, well, we're sorry, we've only got a 1 hour tape. Is that okay? And he goes, I don't know what you want to do with extra 50 minutes. It's just, it goes so quickly because the brain, literally, it works quickly. It's easier to change someone quickly than it is to take time on the situation, because you want to absolutely make that connection and make that connection stick. Whereas if you do it slowly, incrementally, the brain has too much time to think through things, and it starts kind of like polluting your work.
That's really interesting. I didn't think about it like that. I thought it was, this sounds like this is another victim of the pharmaceutical industry with all the allergy medications. You could draw a line back to anything that could be handled, without medication, just using mindset or using different techniques. You could draw a straight line back to some big corporation making money off of it. And that's why this is not a big prevalent thing. I mean, people are aware that it exists, but they're probably like, maybe that doesn't work. I'm not going to try that. And they go through their entire lives, and this applies to far more than allergies, but they just spend their entire lives spending money on all these things, still being miserable, by the way, because a lot of times you take medication for things and it doesn't quite fix the problem. I mean, I was on allergy meds for years and years and years, and it would just kind of, you take it in the morning, and if it was Benadryl, I was going back to bed. But you take your medication in the morning, and sometimes it worked for a few hours, and it would start slowing down. Then at night, I would get miserable again. So it still wasn't really working, and a lot of it, they started changing some of them to over the counter. So people are resourceful. They're making meth out of it and everything else too. So yeah, but it's just another, every time we have one of these conversations about something that could more than likely be fixed through, a practice that you do and that you've helped people with, I'm like, oh, here we go again. That's why they're not talking about it, because somebody's making a ton of money off it. It's frustrating. I mean, it's the way the world works, but it's kind of sad.
And it amazes me so much in terms of the fact that, like, I'll talk to a person that has a lifelong phobia or a lifelong allergy, and I'll be like, give me an hour of your time. Let me just play with you. I'm not even looking to do a session with you. Let's just play around with it. And they're like, nah, not interested. I'm like, you know what? God bless you. It's like, I mean, go ahead, do whatever you want. But it's because we're so conditioned in the fact that, like, it can't be a simple solution. It can't be you talking to me. Because in the brain, if I could fix you by just talking to you, it means that you've been crazy all this time, and that you've definitely made this all up for yourself. And so you're stuck in this place of, you don't technically want me to be able to help you, because if I am able to help you, it means that everything that you've thought was such a big deal, you were really just doing to yourself. And I love that concept so much, in terms of the fact that, I mean, we've watched a lot of talks about this. It's Joe Dispenza's the most common one that we always talk about. Is a concept of how powerful the idea of placebo is. When you just think about the term placebo or what it is, it's like you're talking about a pharmaceutical company sitting there saying, so we've created this amazing thing to heal people from allergies, and it is X% better than a placebo. And when you think about that, it means, when you think about it from the other side, it means that just giving a person a sugar pill worked for Y% of the population. That is amazing to me, in terms of the fact that, like, if I just give you a sugar pill and I put it in the right way and I tell you that this is what works for you, a certain percentage of the population heals by just being given a pill and being told that it's good. Now, if you take that one step further and you actually throw in the concept of hypnotic suggestioning above that, and then you actually take it into the point of making a person completely believe that this is a thing that can heal them and that they are capable of healing themselves, you take that percentage to, very often, and I can't say I've healed every single person I've ever worked with allergies or phobias, for example, but the percentage is well above 80 or 90% in terms of the number of people you can help. And it's just that powerful. And it's just the idea of giving a person the right suggestions at the right time in the right state to break that connection that they have in their brain.
Didn't they just come out and say that 80, it's an 80-20 split on SSRIs, on the antidepressant medication, where the placebo was 80% more effective than which is really screwed up. I don't remember if I told this story before when we talked about my retreat, but I was on a really low grade SSRI after I left Mexico, because if you remember, I had my nervous breakdown when I, in Mexico, came back. We talked about that at length. And then, so I got on a very low grade. I forget what the brand name was. And then when I went to my, and again, we're not doctors and everything else, and whatever, everybody has to do what's best for them. But when I went to the retreat, I'm like, I'm stopping everything. Well, of course, we couldn't have any caffeine. They had green tea there, whatever. So cut down on food, and I didn't take my pills with me, because I'm like, screw it, I'll just cold turkey. Why not? Why not make this as miserable as possible? And That was super weird because I think I'd been on them for a couple months at that point. Now there was a difference. I did feel a difference, but I was kind of loopy on them, so I didn't really feel like myself. I didn't like the feeling of not being with it, but I was very calm all the time. So anyway, what I'm getting at is that I got off those things not the right way, not the way that's recommended. So I just stopped completely on that retreat. Now the good news is I had nothing to do all day except sit and think, but there were some very strange side effects coming off of it,
Like what?
and I thought it was part of the meditation or part of the thing. Well, in my head, if I shut my eyes and I moved my eyes left and right, I would feel an electric zap in my head. And I looked it up after the fact. Of course, I couldn't use my phone while I was there because they take those when you get there. And as soon as I got out, I Googled it, and I'm like, kept moving my eyes around in their sockets, and I felt electrical energy. And they're like, oh, that's a side effect of coming off one of those things. I was like, well, that's really weird. So anyway, I think the pills that they gave me did work and they were real, but coming off of them was kind of scary too. And I've actually heard that it's worse over the year if you take them for years and years and years to come off of it. They had some issues with Parkinson's patients having to get off those things, and it was super miserable. So where I'm going with this is my big thing is I'm not a medication kind of guy. Now, I'm not that stubborn that if I needed one that's going to extend my life, if I need a statin for cholesterol, you name it, if I really needed something, I'm not going to be like, no, I'm just going to ride it out. But I do the best I can to not get on any medications. And there are a lot of people out there that are on all these things that probably could just benefit from first maybe going through some type of therapy. Now, is that going to happen with the way our system's set up right now? Probably not. But just think about all those people out there that probably had an issue, that had a really bad year. Maybe it's like an actual depression, maybe it's situational, and then they get prescribed all these things. And then, gosh, I mean, I was only on them for 2 months and I felt super weird. And the only reason I was able to pull through that and not have any major issues is because at the retreat, they do everything for you. You eat, then you sit on a pillow all day. It's not like I had to function in society, So I was able to not feel well and be kind of out of it. So yeah. Anyway, I don't know why I brought that part up, other than the system's all screwed up, but we already know that already, right? So
well, I'll say, I mean, my father was a doctor, as I think I've shared with you many times, and I mean, so I grew up with medication in my house the whole time, and so it's weird. Like, I mean, me as a hypnotist or me as an evolution coach, whatever you want to call me, I strongly believe in medication. I mean, if there's a pill that can get me through something, I'm going to be the first person to pop that pill. If there's an operation that can make me better, I'm checking that box. Let's do it. But it's at the same time, all I'm asking people to do is, first and foremost, never do anything without a doctor's permission. In terms of, like, I'm not saying stop your SSRIs tomorrow or stop taking your opiates, whatever it is. Obviously, do things in a logical place, because, as you said, like, I mean, these things are very real and they are affecting certain chemistry in your body, whatever it is. And if you stop it, withdrawal symptoms are very real, and your body readapting to things is very, very, very real. But all I say is, over and above that, in terms of those things, also consider the fact that your brain is one of the strongest chemistry labs on the face of the planet. And if you can actually use your brain in the right way, you can achieve the same kind of results as any kind of opiate, as any kind of SSRI, whatever it is, in crazy, crazy ways. And it's just been proven to me over and over again that when I work with a person and when we break the right kind of beliefs, or when we make the right kind of connections, that they get a better result than they were getting with medication. And it happens after a 50-minute time talking with me. And it blows me away. To this day, I'm still in awe about the fact that I talk to a person and all of a sudden their allergies completely gone, or their lifelong pain is just completely gone away. It's instantaneous, and they know it's different. But my favorite thing is, they know it's different, but still a week later they call me up and they're like, "Are you sure this is going to last? Like, it's too good to be true. I still need a pill, right?" And I sit there going, like, I mean, keep your pills around. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you not to, but at the same time, if you don't need them, don't use them. And once their brain starts believing it more and more in terms of the fact that it's a case, these people they're changed forevermore. And it blows me away every single time.
Reminds me of that story I was going to bring up from that show, for that Huberman show, with they were doing the healing times, the powerful, that healing part of your brain. Remember they gave all these people, it was a controlled study, they gave all these people a small injury, and there's three groups. One of them was in a room with a clock that was on normal time. Another group was in a room on a slower clock, and then another group was in a room on a clock that was sped up. And they all had the same injury, the same little cut or whatever it was. They all volunteered for this. It wasn't like whatever. And the people that were in the room where the clock was moving faster healed faster, because they thought more time had passed. How strange is that? And it was every person in that room. It wasn't just one of them. And then on the flip side of that, the people that were in the room with the slower moving clock healed slower. That's how ridiculous our brains can be, man. It's crazy.
It really blows me away over and over again in terms of how powerful the brain is. And I think that probably over these next 10 years, we're going to start seeing some real data proving things going on, things that are right now just still being mentioned anecdotally in terms of like these different things. But it's one of my claims to fame. One of my claims to fame is, I was on National Geographic on a crazy little show, The Truth About Zombies, where they just called me up because they wanted to see, could the concept of zombies be real? And so they spoke to different people about different things. One of them was a toxicologist. Is there a certain kind of poison that they're given, whatever it is? And they said, let's talk to a hypnotist and let's see what's possible. And I said, let's see what the story is. I got a person, actually, weirdly enough, this is going back about 15 years. I got the person off of Craigslist because I wanted to be completely fair. I just posted an ad saying, like, looking for someone that's interested in being on TV. And I got different people and I just tested them for suggestibility, and I found a person that was a highly suggestible person. And then what I did was, just in front of the camera, I put him in a deep state and I just played around with different things. A lot of the stuff didn't make it onto TV because they said that this would be too weird for people. But basically, in a deep state of hypnosis, I patted his arm and I said, your arm has gone completely numb. I just gave it complete anesthesia. I took a pair of surgical clips and I clipped his arm, so point that like your average person would scream in pain. And I made him open up his eyes, and he looked at me, he was like, I don't feel anything. And I was like, okay, cool. Next thing, I got a different person. And I said, and I just made him imagine that he was laying down on a block of ice and that his heart rate is starting to slow down. And I had a person there with an EEG machine just checking him, and his heart rate went from like 80s down into 40s and 50s. And I was like, okay, fine, that's a good enough test right there. And we stopped there too. And we just kept doing all these different tests. And it was just, when you think about the concept of it, it was just me talking to a person I met on Craigslist, and I just said, like, come on in, let's just try this out. Obviously, they were highly suggestible. I tested them for that. But like, by just doing these different things, they managed to have no sense of pain. They managed to completely reduce their heart rate by me just telling them your heart is slowing down. It's when I was in high school, I wanted to give this talk, and my teacher never let me give it. But basically, I was going to put my friend between two desks and sit on his stomach. And this is the most common thing that you see in hypnotic stage shows, that you can just make a person completely cataleptic, that they can't move. You can put a person between two chairs, between two tables, and you can stand on their stomach, and the person will just stay stiff by just the suggestion that their body is stiff like a surfboard. And I did it with him, testing it. It's everything before my speech. I wanted to see that would work. And my teacher was like, you're not allowed to do that in my class. In hindsight, I quite agree with her. But all these different things you can do by just the power of suggestion. And when you think about that, this has been used for decades, if not centuries now, in terms of medical practice, where you can give a person complete anesthesia, and dentists are able to pull teeth when a person is allergic to chemical anesthesia. I had this one client, a close friend of mine at that point in time, where I managed to actually cure his nearsightedness by just I hypnotically regressed him back to the age of 5, where he was able to see well. And then and I was like, I don't think that this will work, but let's see. I just hypnotized him. I took him back to age of 5, and I grew him up with the young eyes. And then I just had him read out of a phone book, and he was sitting there going like, John Schwartz, like just reading it completely normally. It just blows me away about the power of the human brain.
Yeah, it's funny. You talk about nearsightedness. I have to go to Michigan. It's a whole thing. My Florida driver's license expires on my birthday in May, and I can't do another online renewal because I have to get the little real ID star and whatever. I have all the paperwork. But our main home base is in Michigan, so I have to fly to Michigan to my mom's place, make an appointment or whatever. And the reason I'm bringing this up about the eyesight is this year, there's been a dramatic change in my eyesight. I had LASIK when I was 25 and had very, very good vision up until just recently. I'm looking at road signs. I'm looking at some stuff like a TV across the room. It's noticeable. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Like, when did this happen? It happened, I don't want to say overnight, but it happened fast enough for me to like look up now and like, oh shit, like what is this? Now that said, I knew this day was coming because I got LASIK when I was 25. I'm surprised it lasted this long. It lasted 20 years,
but you there for one second. Yeah. It's an interesting thing that you just said. I knew this day was coming, which to me, from the point
I did it to myself.
It sits there going like, you knew this day was coming, did you? I'm not
saying
you did it yourself, but that's an interesting statement to make. The hypnotist's ears perk up every single time. You know something was coming, do you? Well, in that case, congratulations. You lived a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So there's something interesting behind that. About a month ago, because my girlfriend keeps up with all, she does what Brittany does. So she just keeps up with all just different health trends and hormone imbalances and everything else and all that. She found this article that said men, we have times in our lives where we age much faster and things go to shit faster.
I saw that.
So
article.
like, for example, it's slow for a bit and then it spikes. Well, it spikes at 44. Well, guess how old I am now? Even though I look like I'm 50 something. But I'm 44 this year. And I don't remember now. I can't remember if my eyesight that I started noticing it was it before or after she mentioned that article. And I'm like, shit, maybe she mentioned it, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, maybe I am kind of tired. Maybe my eyes are getting bad, and it could be the testosterone thing for anybody listening or watching. I got my testosterone levels tested like most guys do at a certain age, and they're not like they're not really low enough to get full-time meds, but they're close. And I don't know, is all this stuff just because I hear it so much and I read about it so much and I try to stay up with the health trends? Is some of it, obviously age does play a factor, but is some of it also that I'm just like, well, I'm supposed to have bad eyes when I'm 44? How much of my really is up here? Yeah.
So it's also played from the other point of view. It's like, let's even just say that it is age and that you've just gotten old and your body's just kind of like going down, whatever it is. There's also the other side where they've actually taken and we listened to the same podcast on this. I don't remember her name. Do you remember her name?
It's Evelyn something, Dr. Evelyn something. She works at Harvard. She did that study where they took the group of 80-year-olds up to upstate New York.
Exactly.
And they had the house where 20 years earlier, they had all the music photographs. She would only let them talk about stuff from 20 years before. And they were up there for, I think, 10 days or something. It was a short period of time. And she did a bunch of tests on them ahead of time and tests afterwards. And their biological age, their blood tests and everything else was back to the levels that would have been at 20 years before, just from being in an environment where their music was from that particular year and the stuff on the walls and the magazines and all that stuff.
So what I want you to do is play around with that concept in terms of the fact that, like, let's even just say that you did age. That's very possible. So don't sit there saying, like, maybe I aged myself and I'm doing something wrong. Maybe what you can say is, maybe I can de-age myself, and then you're back in control of being able to do things the other way around by just focusing in on what it's like to have younger eyes, by just focusing in on your eyes getting younger, by just focusing in on your body having the same kind of virility and power that I had when you were 20, whatever it is. And just continuing that, stepping into that world more and more and more, the exact same way that the men did. And the more you can immerse yourself in it, I mean, she did it very powerfully where, she had them live that life 24/7 for 10 days. And so they experienced a very large shift. But for anyone listening, just stepping into meditation, and here's the big thing that really makes a difference. Like I said before, you can't dilute the idea of, I feel slightly good and now I should be doing better. You have to completely step into that other reality, even if it's for moments at a time, where you genuinely feel yourself fully healed, where you genuinely feel yourself with young eyes. And if you can step into that reality fully and completely, and you actually let that spread into your body, your brain doesn't know the difference between something that is real and vividly imagined. But the real challenge here is that concept of vividly imagined. If you're imagining something, but in the back of your brain, you sit there saying, oh, I'm just imagining it, this isn't real, you're not vividly imagining it. Vividly imagining that you're vividly imagining. What you need to do is you need to step into the reality so deeply that your brain doesn't know the difference between that and reality. If you can step in that reality for moments even at a time and just extend that longer and longer, I've seen it happen over and over again. The changes are dramatic. And this goes back to the Joe Dispenza thing. This is what people heal from cancers. This is where people get rid of 20-year issues where they were half blind, where people get rid of their body having deformities in their body by literally just stepping into a different reality so vividly that they actually don't realize that that isn't reality just for that moment.
I wonder how much that would have to be done, because I'm kind of laughing as we're talking about this too, because I'm thinking, so I remember what I was doing when I was 25. I could go back to that reality. I could step into that. I'd have to go buy a Porsche and then be super irresponsible, because those are my even more immature years. So I'm like, I would love to put myself, but the seriousness though on a daily basis, because we only have so much time on our hands to meditate and do other things. I wonder what that would look like. Would it just be finding something as silly as finding music from back then? Or are we talking about just taking an hour out of the day and just really trying to think hard about it? What would be the process for that?
So first and foremost, I think an hour out of the day is way too long to do this, because it's if you can build up to an hour over the course of multiple months, go for it. But we're talking about moments. I'm talking about 15 to 40 seconds is what I'm aiming for here. And it's whatever it is that takes you there. Like, I mean, so if it's listening to the music and it really takes you back there, but the whole idea here is you can't be a 44-year-old imagining that you're 25. You have to be a 25-year-old in that moment. And that is the big difference that's going to make a huge difference. You genuinely have to step into that reality so deeply that your body feels that's 25. And now, here's the thing. I'm not asking you to step into being the immature 25-year-old that is snorting coke and driving the fast cars. It's what I'm asking you to do is to step into the eyes of a 25-year-old. That's it. Just if you could feel what it's like that you've got clear vision again and really step into it. Again, not as a 44-year-old imagining what it's to have clear eyes, to genuinely for 15 to 40 seconds, feel what it's like to see things so clearly again, that your body doesn't know the difference. And what will happen is in that moment, your brain will start making different connections. And I've seen it happen that even just doing this once really, really, really properly changes everything. And again, taking it back to the example of the guy that I hypnotized for the eyesight. One time I hypnotized him, I took him back to being 5 years old, and I just aged him back up. Obviously, it was under deep hypnosis, but the whole session lasted maybe 20 minutes. The actual part of the session, beyond getting him into the deep state, lasted 3 minutes, whatever it is. And all of a sudden, the guy's reading out of a phone book, something he hadn't done for years. Because for him, I think it was 35 was the age when he knew his eyes were going to go bad, or 40 was the age he had a very specific date in his mind that he knew his eyes were going to go bad, and lo and behold, they did. And the one thing I'm just going to add on to this is, if you don't have a date in your mind, it doesn't mean that this doesn't work. I don't want to just sit there saying that this happened to you because you knew at 44 this kind of bad stuff would happen because Jesse read you the article. I want you to specifically just understand the fact that this is what the brain does, because society tells us that when you get old, these are the things that are going to happen to you. And it just becomes a pattern that's just locked into your brain of belief of this is the way things are going to be.
I'm sitting here thinking, I wonder if it's something I can do while I'm like out walking the beach or something. Because in order to kind of trick myself or at least make it more realistic, because if I walk somewhere now where I'm looking at signs and road signs, it's pretty obvious that it's a little blurry in the distance. It can be hard to fool myself out of that. But if I'm somewhere where there's not any detail that I could see, looking at sand or the waves or something like that, the difference between slightly blurred and perfect vision, there's no way for me to consciously know that. Now, if I'm looking across, I can see across the street over here out the window, there's a bank sign that's a little blurry to me. It'd be hard for me to look at that and then try to pretend I have 25-year-old eyes if I still can't see it. It'd be a feedback loop that doesn't really help.
And we've discussed this before, and to me, like, this is the one thing that I do at the beginning of every session, and it is so, so powerful in terms of doing things. And if you remember, it's could I, would I, when will I? It's the idea of you have to actually believe it as a possibility. To me, that first question, could I have this change happen, is a thing that makes a big difference. Because if you sit there going, Ori told me to try this, and it's going to be cool, and let me try, you're trying. It's like, it's as one of my statements goes, you're trying too hard. You don't really believe it's going to happen, but you're trying because Ori told you should give it a try. But could you imagine a reality where within a week, your eyes heal? And my guess is the first time I asked you that question, you're probably going, not really. I mean, like, no real world could that really be the case. And as long as that ends up being your truth, you're always going to be trying to heal yourself. And so you have to genuinely just play around in your brain and see, could I genuinely heal my eyes within the next week? And really keep playing with it until you realize that there is, in the grand scheme of the multiverse of possibilities, that there is a Lee somewhere in the multiverse of infinite possibilities that managed to heal his eyes over the next week. And if you can step into that reality, that is a possibility for you to heal your eyes, then the exercise actually stands a chance of working.
And I'm pretty, like most people, just hearing that it worked for somebody else is usually enough for me to at least get into that. So just hearing that you've seen it yourself before, and I'm sure if we looked up online, there's probably all different types of cases, that enough is usually, and also not wanting to go through surgery again. And if anybody's had LASIK before, it's not bad. You're in and out in a day, but it's still not something you want to have to do, and it's not cheap. So, you shouldn't have to put yourself through that. So that's just one thing that a good example of how people can heal themselves among the other millions of things. They did the same thing we were talking about that study before with broken bones, I think. They were saying doctors we'll typically tell somebody it's going to take about 6 weeks for your broken leg to heal, or broken arm, whatever. And then what they started doing is they started suggesting that doctors do is say some people heal in 2 weeks, some people heal in 4 weeks, kind of leave it open-ended, because some patients really do heal sooner. The problem with human beings is, especially with men, we break something and then a week later we're trying to do things with it. So there's also that. Like, you also have to make sure you actually do let it heal. But you don't want to, whenever they told somebody it does take this long to heal, it would literally take people that long to heal, because they would get in their heads, right?
Yeah. And the last example that I want to give of this is the exact is a very interesting one, where it's I don't know the study, but it definitely is out there, where what they did was they took people that needed knee surgery, absolutely needed knee surgery. And they split up into two different groups. In the one group, they gave a knee surgery. In the second group, what they did was they took them into the hospital, they wheeled them into the operating room, they gave them the anesthesia, if I remember correctly, and then they even made a cut, but they didn't do the actual surgery. And what they discovered was the people that underwent the fake surgery had the exact same level of healing as the people that got a complete knee replacement, a total knee replacement. I mean, think about the power of that. So again, what they did was they created a reality where it was possible by doing everything. I mean, going into the surgical room, getting the anesthesia, waking up and seeing a cut on their knee and knowing that it happened, and the doctor saying everything went great, we fixed up everything. It was such a strong placebo that these people just completely healed in the same way as if they got a total knee replacement. It's like, when you think about that, it's one thing to talk about it, but rarely step into the reality of someone getting a tiny cut, but being told that it was a total knee replacement and getting the same level of healing. I mean, down to the point of that they get an MRI and their knee actually looks as healed as if they got the actual operation. That is absolutely wild when you think about it.
I just think that there should be a market for that. There should be a facility somewhere in the that does real procedures, but also is
And you don't know which one you are?
You don't know which one you're going to get. You've got whether it's like a minor thing or some huge, like maybe you have an inoperable brain tumor or something. We're going to take you in and you're not going to know which one you're going to get. That may be silly, but I'm surprised it's not a thing.
I love the idea. The only challenge I have with that is I wonder if it would take the people that actually got the real surgery and make them doubt their results and actually possibly get worse healing results. Because if you know for a fact that it's a 50-50 split, odds are you're going to get 50-50 chance of remission of the problem. It almost needs to be done in a tricking way on some level. And I want you to just pay attention to that, because everyone that's listening to this, what I'm saying to do here is, and I've said this before, and it's so important to me, the unconscious mind doesn't need reality. The unconscious mind needs you to believe in a story. And when you really, really lock that in terms of the fact of, I can tell myself anything, and I'm living in a made-up fantasy world regardless. So why don't I make up the fantasy world that actually genuinely suits me? Like, I would rather hypnotize myself and say, I can completely heal, and in 5 years' time find out that I was completely wrong. But you know what? For the last 5 years, I've been feeling great. It's like, to me, that works better. I'm perfectly fine with fooling myself. I remember when I first started having these kind of amazing results, my father turned around and said, you're just the person that every placebo in the world works on. And he basically almost put it in as an insult. And I was like, thanks so much, Dad. It's like you don't understand how wonderful that is. I managed to actually play around with my brain enough to make it so I could get the results I wanted without having to go through these crazy procedures. That to me is like the biggest, most powerful gift a person can have. But most people in this world would almost consider you to be the fool, the one that just got tricked, that had the gullible stuff happen to him, right? I'm perfectly fine with that. But I love your idea. I feel like it would go in the opposite direction for half the people, that they would just naturally be pessimistic about, oh gosh, I probably got the fake procedure.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I could totally see, just not just with what we're talking about today, but we're going to look back at 100 years if people are still around, and there's going to be so many things that we're talking about now that are going to be very obvious and very, very standardized. They're going to look back and be like, look at all the drugs these people were taking, all the prescriptions. Look at they had places on every corner where you could go drink that poison alcohol. They'd probably be illegal again at some point. They had having mushrooms was a felony. How stupid are all these things? But yeah, no, hopefully we get into some of this stuff too. I know we've got some retreat plans coming up, and I know we've been teasing it out a little bit. We haven't gotten into it a lot because we're still trying to work out the details. Many different types of retreats. We've got obviously the GPRR one, which is very involved and very intense, that we do out of the country. And then there's some wellness retreat stuff we're working on with Shift and Brittany, and then also separate from that. And there could be some space for, I mean, obviously you do this in your practice, but for certain types of things that people with different issues, I wonder if that would be helpful or not. Now I'm just thinking out loud. You can correct me here, but let's say you had 10 people that were nearsighted or something like that. Would it be beneficial in a group setting to come down for a couple of days and meet and get together, or is that just, like you said, it's got to be quick, right? I don't know if it would make sense to have a week-long retreat, but I'm thinking maybe if you had a wellness retreat and during that retreat you asked everybody, hey, what are all your problems? I don't know. Maybe that could be part of it. So
I think that would be pretty cool. Like, I don't necessarily think that they would need all that, but like, I mean, it would be part of a retreat. And the thing that would make it so powerful would be more so, like you said, the social proof. If we actually had a videographer there that watched these people that couldn't read out of something, and then we actually just documented the small things that they went through, and then all of a sudden they're able to read, using that as proof for the next group of people is where the real power comes about. Like, I mean, to me, like, that would be just absolutely amazing. But like, it's the one thing that I always loved doing was mastermind things, where it's very often it was the same kind of thing. Whereas for me, the whole idea of a mastermind really boiled down to just one thing: getting a person to believe that their goal is achievable for them. If you can get that done, everything else is possible. So like, it's when you come to a retreat, if I can get you to believe that you could heal your eyes, or if I can get you to believe that you could actually get out of this wall of debt, or if I got you to believe that you could stop your lifelong pain or your lifelong addiction, whatever it is, and you genuinely believe that this could happen for you, I'd say 80% of my work is done. And then after that, it's just a matter of taking you through the final steps to actually make it all happen. And that just works better when when I control your environment enough to make that happen, in the same way that I can take an 80-year-old and I can just completely control their environment, make sure that they don't see anything besides what they saw in the 1960s. And so they believe that they're back there. That's where the power of a retreat may actually be very, very powerful.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. We've got a few in the works right now, and we're actually going to be asking for a lot of feedback on what people need. And as you just mentioned, maybe it is just a general wellness retreat and everybody comes with their own problems, which everybody's got plenty of those. But we also, like you mentioned, we're going to make sure we have some things to show for it. Not only the results and things that happen at the retreat, but doing follow-ups. So you could see like, hey, these people are still successfully dealing with this, whatever the issue, insert issue here. Not like watching a mega church, somebody gets out of a wheelchair at the end of the service because they're so full of adrenaline. Heal, and then they then they have to be wheeled out because it was just in the moment they were so like full of adrenaline or everything else. So yeah, we'll definitely have to do that. Man, I don't know, man. This is a great one today. I'm glad we got into it. I'm glad we were talking about allergies. I'm gonna work on my eyes too, because I think, look, everybody's got something, right? Whether it's a minor allergy or anything that, and arguably some things do need surgery. I mean, there's certain things that you probably should go for it again, but there could just be something, anything minor. What we'll do is we'll do some follow-ups on all that stuff too. But I'm going to go try my eye thing on the beach. But again, we are working on retreats for these things. Obviously, Ori sees patients on a regular basis for one-on-ones for all this help and everything else. So we appreciate you guys. And we'll catch you next week. We got a couple big updates coming up. Next time we do a show, you may see my background may be different. I may be in an RV somewhere in Austin. We'll see how that goes. If my background is not in an RV in Austin the next time we do this, it's because something went wrong. But we'll take that as it comes. But good to see everybody. We appreciate it. And to be continued.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks, Lee.
Hey everyone, it's Lee. Just one more thing before you go. Ever wondered how journaling could help change your life? You can find out by downloading the Emotional Alchemy Journal from the link in the description. It's a powerful tool for deep self-reflection, and it's completely free. And if you're looking to connect with Ori and learn more about how he can help you, visit his website at OriGoldstein.com. A link will also be in the description. Until next time, keep challenging the chaos within, be a little kinder to yourself, and let's continue to evolve together.